Summary: The Technological Republic, Hard Power, Soft Belief, and the Future of the West by Alexander C. Karp and Nicholas W. Zamiska. In the Technological Republic, Palantir co-founder Alexander C. Karp and his longtime deputy Nicholas W. Zamiska present forceful and provocative manifesto that challenges the trajectory of modern Silicon Valley and more broadly the Western world. The book is part cultural critique, political philosophy, and part industry confessional, sweeping diagnosis of what the authors see as the intellectual and strategic decline of the United States and its allies in the face of rising geopolitical and technological threats. At the heart of the book is the argument that Silicon Valley, the vanguard of Western innovation, has abandoned its historical mission, once crucible of purposeful, often government-aligned technological advancement, now churns out increasingly trivial products. Photo-sharing apps, algorithmic ad targeting, and gamified consumption dominate its output. This, argue Karp and Zamiska, is not simply a matter of market forces at play. It is symptomatic of deeper malaise, the erosion of civic courage, intellectual resilience, and moral seriousness across the West. 1. From Arsenal of Democracy to Engine of Distraction. The authors open with historical contrast, tracing the early post-war years when engineering genius and national ambition were tightly intertwined. They invoke the Manhattan Project, the space race, and ARPANET to show how America once mobilized technical talent for grand strategic aims. These were not just technological feats, but expressions of civilizational will to lead. However, since late 20th century, that symbiosis has frayed. In the post-Cold War years, Silicon Valley emerged as a hub of private innovation divorced from state imperatives, the libertarian ethos that animated early tech entrepreneurs. Disruptive, individualist, skeptical of authority, soon calcified into what Karp and Zamiska call soft nihilism, belief that the market alone will sort all problems and that technology should aim primarily to individual convenience. The result is technological republic in name only, society that possesses the tools of transformation but lacks the political or moral clarity to use them effectively. The authors argue that the widespread belief in the inevitability of Western preeminence has created dangerous complacency, one that autocratic adversaries like China and Russia are eager to exploit. 2. The complacency of the elite. Karp and Zamiska are particularly scathing in their indictment of America's elite class, its technocrats, university administrators, journalists, and corporate leaders, whom they accuse of intellectual cowardice and moral equivocation. The authors see broader cultural trend that mirrors the shallowness of Silicon Valley. Tendency to avoid difficult conversations, preference for safe ideas, and pathological fear of offense. Drawing inspiration from Alan Bloom's The Closing of the American Mind, the book argues that Western universities, once the guardians of rigorous debate, now prize conformity over confrontation. Students are trained to be consensus builders rather than courageous thinkers. Faculty shy away from exploring controversial topics. Bureaucracies and ideological litmus tests, the authors argue, have become gatekeepers of innovation rather than its catalysts. Result is generation of engineers, scientists, and leaders more attuned to the demands of corporate HR and online outrage than to the existential challenges facing their societies. These intellectual habits, argue the authors, make it nearly impossible to imagine, let alone implement, bold technological or strategic projects on the scale once seen during the Cold War. 3. Silicon Valley's dereliction. While the book is polemic, it is also in many ways confessional. Karp, as the CEO of Palantir, has occupied unique space in the tech world, straddling the line between private innovation and government partnership. He and Zamiska pull back the curtain on the political and cultural battles inside Palantir and in its engagements with Western militaries and intelligence services. Palantir, founded in the aftermath of 11, was conceived as counterweight to the prevailing tech industry mindset. Where others shunned defense contracts, Palantir leaned into them, seeing national security not as an ethical liability but as moral obligation. Karp recounts the company's early struggles, vilified by civil liberties groups, distrusted by intelligence agencies, and shunned by Silicon Valley peers, as it attempted to build tools that could help prevent terrorist attacks in liberal democracies. These insider accounts are illuminating, especially in their depiction of how difficult it is for Western governments to integrate cutting-edge technology. Bureaucratic inertia, procurement sclerosis, and risk aversion have paralyzed many of the institutions charged with defending democracy. Karp and Zamiska urge radical rethinking of how government interfaces with the tech sector, calling for new engineering mindset in public administration. one that prizes speed, iteration, and boldness over consensus and process, or hard power, soft belief. The title of the book references central paradox. The West still holds significant hard power, military might, technological capability, capital reserves, but is increasingly afflicted by soft belief, that is, lack of conviction in its own values, missions, and institutions. This section of the book is philosophical in tone, reflecting Karp's training as political theorist. The authors warn that civilization that ceases believe in itself will eventually lose the ability to defend itself, no matter how advanced its weaponry. They juxtapose the technocratic West with an ideologically assertive China, where technology serves state goals and national ambition remains unashamed. Karp and Zamiska are careful not to romanticize authoritarianism. Instead, they argue that the West must outbelieve its rivals by recovering the moral confidence that once defined its technological projects. That means reinvigorating the liberal tradition of open debate, dissent, and risk-taking. Tradition now under siege from both the far left and far right. In their view, only morally serious and strategically bold West can compete in the coming AI arms race, navigate the upheavals of quantum computing, and weather the sociopolitical consequences of automation. 5. The AI Crucible. One of the book's most urgent chapters focuses on artificial intelligence. Karp and Zamiska frame the current moment as historical fork. AI can either be force for liberal renewal or tool of liberal dominance. The stakes, they argue, are no less than civilizational. The authors warn that if the development and deployment of AI remain in the hands of companies that view alignment as an abstract technical puzzle and a geopolitical imperative, the West will lose control over the most powerful tools of the century. The concern is not only about AI escaping human oversight, the usual sight trope, but about AI being captured by adversarial regimes or ideologies. Karp and Zamiska urge much tighter integration of AI research with democratic governance and military planning. They argue for export controls, alliances among liberal democracies, and public-private partnerships to ensure that Western values, freedom, pluralism, transparency, are embedded in the systems shaping tomorrow's world. 6. The Republic of Engineers. The closing chapters are prescriptive. The authors call for the creation of Republic of Engineers, civic and political movement that restores technical seriousness and moral ambition to the center of American life. This vision includes redesigning university education with stronger emphasis on national service, problem solving, and philosophical rigor. It includes changes to government such as appointing chief engineer officers, reforming procurement systems, and encouraging technologists to serve in public office. And it includes cultural realignment within the tech industry, one that reorients founders and engineers toward public missions, not just private exits. Throughout, Karp and Zamiska return to single theme: the need to reject fear of failure, fear of offense, fear of going against the grain. These have all contributed to the stagnation they diagnose. The West needs now, they argue, is not merely technological capacity, but moral clarity and intellectual courage. Conclusion: call to arms. The technological republic is not merely lament for lost past or polemic against tech excess. It is called to arms, plea for Western renewal at a time when the global order appears increasingly unstable. Its tone is urgent, unapologetically elite, and occasionally combative, but always grounded in deep belief in the promise of the liberal democratic tradition. Karp and Zamiska are ideal messengers for this moment inside, who have built powerful tools for the national security state, and outsiders in value that often prizes fashionable politics over strategic necessity. Their vision is not easy to implement, nor is it free from controversy. But it is hard to read this book without feeling stirred to question whether the West is doing enough to deserve the freedoms it enjoys. In the final pages, they quote Cicero: "The safety of the people shall be the highest law." For Karp Zamiska, safety is not only physical but intellectual and civilizational. It begins not with better gadgets, but with better understanding of who we are, what we stand for, and how far we're willing to go to protect it.